Hey there, welcome back. Today I've lined up some brand new stories for you to sit back and enjoy. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And let's get started with the first story right away.
Story 1. A little over a year ago, my stepfather chose to keep my sister alive. Today he is sending her to a full-time care facility. Posted by you/Sabushi. My little sister was in a serious car accident in October 2020. She broke too many bones, and it released fat into her bloodstream. The fat collected in her brain and deprived it of oxygen. It's called cerebral fat emboly. Yeah, I had never heard of it either. The scan they showed us looked like her brain was just full of big white spots. She was 17 at the time. One doctor told us, her brain is incompatible with life, among other things, but I remember that line specifically. It was stark and cold, but it got the point across and I believed him. My stepdad and mother took it to an emotional level and acted like they had been insulted when we reflected on the conversation. Another doctor gave his opinion. This doctor walked into a room with my sister's beaten body, my stepfather, and my mother, noticed my stepdad's Trump hat, and made a joke about him needing to win. I remember yelling, but I don't remember what I said. I was angry that anyone could even crack a smile at that moment, nonetheless make jokes, nonetheless make effing political jokes. He told my stepdad, who had control over the decision to pull life support or not, we just have to pray. If this was an older woman, then I would agree to pull the plug, but I have faith that she can get through this. I can feel it. I didn't believe him. I don't believe in God, but I did get a glimmer of hope that hadn't been there before. My stepdad went full force belief that she would fully recover. She had to be resuscitated 2 more times that month. My stepdad still chose to keep her on life support. Eventually, she started breathing over the ventilator. When she finally opened her eyes a few months later, I realized we had made an awful mistake. She was not there at all. Her eyes always looked through me, her muscles stayed tensed, and her arms tight to her chest. Always. It looks so painful when I feel her arms. She always has a grimace. She sometimes twists her face into a silent, wide-eyed scream. Her face stays wet from tears. She was the most important person to me, I loved her with all my heart. She and I had been through too much and helped each other navigate life. She was beautiful, intelligent, and amazingly creative. The singular person I never expected or prepared myself to ever lose. And now here she was, all her vibrancy and life trapped inside this corpse. My stepdad stayed with her at the hospital till the day he brought her to his home. He got his living room set up like a small hospital. He would bring her to a day care once in a while and they say she has friends there. Anytime I think of her, it feels like my heart is going to vomit out of my throat, the pain is so deep. This would be so much easier to handle if I thought she had moved on, but my soul is crushed at the thought of her having an inkling of consciousness in that body, and even more, I can do absolutely nothing about it. Today I found out he is sending her to a full-time facility because she has made no progression and they are starting to think she will not actually recover. My mother seems relatively unfazed, but I find it impossible to not see the depth of this moment. The choice he made to keep her alive, and now she will spend the next 50 or so years trapped inside a shell, staring at the white walls of a building full of strangers, seeing the occasional familiar teary face. Unable to express the violent boredom she feels, if she can even understand what being bored is. Maybe she is just screaming in her mind, endlessly tortured by her confusion. An everlasting hell. This is such a effing nightmare. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. I am truly sorry that this happened to you and her. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, and the condition he ended up in made me understand the value of quality of life. I didn't cry when he passed away. I cried while he was still alive because he was unable to move or communicate. Eventually, he got to the point where he couldn't even swallow. So when he passed away, I felt like he was free from a body that he was trapped in. I understand how you feel. Commenter 2. We would not even do that to animals we love. Ops response. I can't tell you how many times I have screamed exactly this. Downvoted commenter 3. As strongly as I agree with you, I feel there was no correct decision in that moment. Choosing to end a loved one's life so soon after a trauma is not a decision that should fall on any one person, especially a non-blood parent. Time would create animosity regardless of his choice. That choice was not his to make. You did not go into the reason why her mother, who was present and accounted for, had no strong feelings one way or the other. Circumstances notwithstanding, the decision should have been made by you and her mother. I am very sorry for the loss of your sister. I do not believe we should use technology to sustain the heartbeat of anyone whose brain is not functioning at a level where they can experience happiness. I understand and respect that you don't believe in a creator, but I do. You and your sister are in my prayers. Ops response. The correct decision was to let her go. It's his daughter, my stepdad. My mother is a raging drug addict, wheelchair-bound by her addiction. She stays isolated and never really showed strong emotions about the situation, which is on par with her character. I knew from day one it was wrong to keep her alive. I understand he loved her, but ignoring logic because of your love is cruel and selfish. I don't care what everyone thinks. This man also was nearly never around when she was little because he was also a drug addict. Before she passed, they had almost no relationship. She did not like him. I was the only one that truly loved her in that room. Downvoted commenter 4. As much as I agree that your dad made the wrong choice, no one is born perfect, and no one knows what to do all the time. We make wrong decisions, due to which we and our loved ones suffer. I would say don't be so hard on your parents. At a time like this, what you need is to be supportive and be there for each other. I'm sure that even your parents realize how much they effed up, even though they might not want to admit it. We do selfish things for the people we love. We, as humans, are hopeful beings, and we hold out hope. If I or my family member was ever diagnosed with something terminal, we would never give up until the last breath. What you need is understanding and empathy at the moment. I'm sure they already feel shifty as it is. No need to make things worse. This is my opinion though. To add to this, were your sister in her senses to make decisions herself, if your parents went against that, that would be immoral. Absolutely. But this was not the case, and in such situations, we do what we consider the best. Maybe they couldn't handle the idea of losing her, and they got hung on that little hope they had of getting her back. I just know that I wouldn't give up on my loved ones either. My baby sister had a stroke at 27, and I kind of understand a bit what you went through. Forgive your parents. They need you now more than ever, and you need them. Ops response. There is a lot that happened in our lives, and compounded with losing my sister, we have no relationship anymore. We are cordial with each other though. Update 2 years 1 month later. I see her face in young people, and it hurts. I need to vent this. Whenever I meet young adults that were her age when the accident happened, I feel protective and sad. I feel like I'm seeing my sister again, and I hate it. For context, about 3 years ago my sister was in a serious car accident at 17. She finally passed away 8 months ago after 2 years of suffering, stuck in a broken shell. I can be out sometimes, and my friend's sister will come hang out. I love her, but I get weird and sad almost every time. I feel like I need to give her advice, like I need to make up somehow by passing off what I have learned that I couldn't show to my sister. I do my best to stop myself, because I know it must be annoying, and because I annoy myself with it. We also have a family that we're close with, and their little girl reminds me so much of Leanne. She's smart, witty, creative, ambitious. Everything my sister was. She tells me about how good she is doing in school, and I get heartbroken. Then I get angry at myself for being so selfish. The nights after I see people like this, I always end up sobbing when I'm alone. I feel like I need to vomit my heart up. I think about all the life Leanne missed out on, relationships, breakups, friendships, discussions, realizations, the grief, the loneliness, the rage, the love, the boredom. So much boredom. She'll never experience any of this crap that makes life so beautiful and so terrible, that we all take for granted, and I missed out getting to watch her live it. I see her absence everywhere. Second update 1 year 10 months later. I posted to True off my chest 3 years ago during one of the worst periods of my life. I wrote the post below for the subreddit r/grief support as a thank you and a goodbye to that sub, but felt it was a good idea to bring it here as well. Maybe my story can reach others who need to hear this. TW, grief and unactioned self-harm. In 2020, my beautiful 17-year-old sister was in a car accident which resulted in her becoming a non-verbal paraplegic for nearly 2 years. She eventually passed and was released from that horrible condition. I helped raise her alongside our 2 drug-addicted, violent parents. She was my sister, my best friend, and practically my child. I felt like my heart was ripped from my chest. I tried to do my normal day-to-day, but when I was finally alone, I would sob for hours, sometimes until I threw up. I felt as though my body was filled with lead. Around the time of the original post, but before she finally passed away, I completely checked out. I decided I did not want to experience the pain anymore and made a plan to end my life. I would write a letter to every person important to me and make my exit. This comment is where I alluded to this in the original post. It feels important to the story. Editor's note, Op linked his comment in a comment chain. Start of comment chain. Commenter. Your stepdad is a selfish prick. Commenter 2. That doctor who gave them hope she might recover is the jerk. The stepdad, in his grief, jumped at the chance that she could recover. Op's response. I spent a lot of the night looking for the doctor's name so I could write him a letter. I hope to inform him that this is just as much as doing as my stepfather's in the near future. End of comment chain. I took time off and started writing the letters. After a few days I went to sleep knowing I had 2 more left, one for my father and one for my best friend. I was prepared for the next day to be my last. I woke up the next morning to a call from my friend. She invited me to a bar for some drinks with our group and I reluctantly said yes. It was a beautiful sunny day, we sat on the patio, had some beers, laughed, walked around the bayou, Enjoyed the breeze. I felt alive again for the first time in a long time. I remember the last moment of that day still so vividly. I was sitting by the water thinking I only had 2 letters left and it came to me, I would have missed this. That thought changed my life. I've since made a solemn vow that I am going to stick it out until the end, for better or worse. After that day, I joined the grief support sub along with other support groups and got a therapist to help navigate the tremendous pain I was experiencing. Later I started commenting on posts in the support subs to give insights on my experiences. I hope I have helped some people by sharing my thoughts and what I have learned. Now, I am at a phase where I feel like I am plateaued in my recovery, and seeing some of these posts, in the support subs, are forcing me to relive darker days that I don't want to anymore. Making me realize something: I no longer need grief support. This realization feels like a major milestone for me, that I finally see myself as stable enough to no longer need the encouragement and advice these communities offer. And not only to me, but the stories, support, and love you have given each other has also been a boon in my journey. With the new year, I wanted to write this post for myself as a marker, to say goodbye to this sub, grief support, to thank all of you for your stories and your compassion, and to leave some parting thoughts of hope. For any of you that feel a connection to where I was a few years ago, things will get better. I know it is cliché, but if there is anyone you can trust those words from, I would think it is me. Something I've learned and try to share often: this grief you feel will never go away, it will never get smaller. But you will grow bigger around it, and you will become more because of it. Know there is hope. Right now very well may be the worst part in your life, and we know that nothing can ever be the same without them. But if you take things one day, sometimes one step, or even one breath at a time, you will experience good days again, you will feel love again, you will be happy again. Life is a painting. Any beautiful painting needs dark colors as well as bright colors, but it has to be completed. These dark days will make your future bright days all the richer and more vibrant, but you have to fight through this to see them. I'll be happy if even one person reads this and takes away the most important lesson I nearly didn't get a chance to learn. Don't miss the rest of it. /relevant comments. Commenter. Yeah. It was weird when I realized I graduated from the widow chat communities. Not because I was done grieving, but because I realized the pain had moved. I didn't want to continue to dwell, or it would be all consuming. I'm so happy you found happier times. Commenter 2. Thank you for posting this. I read that things will get better, and I broke down. I needed this. So thank you, from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you. To another commenter. Thank you so much. Someone commented in the original post something I still think about a lot: life is suffering, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. I have tried to help others navigate their own grief with the thought that her death can have some meaning. I've always enjoyed writing and hope my words have saved people. I feel some guilt about leaving the support groups, knowing I will have fewer opportunities to share and help coach others. But my therapist agrees that it is what's best so I can continue to move on. So I'm sharing here too for a final opportunity to get our story out to those who may need it. It feels tremendous that Leanne and myself touched you. You are loved, and tomorrow is a new day. Story 2. AITA for telling my wife to stop being so jealous of my friend's fiancé? Posted by you/throwawayhusband264. My wife, 35F, and I, 36M, are good friends with another couple, my best friend Matt, 36M, and his fiancée Rachel, 24F. Rachel models and is very attractive. My wife is less conventionally attractive, but I fell in love with her for her humor and good spirit, which I personally find more attractive than good looks. Recently, I've noticed my wife making a lot of comments about Rachel, calling her an airhead and just being kind of mean. When my wife makes these comments in private, I'm able to stand up for Rachel, but when they're made in public, I obviously don't want to embarrass my wife by calling her out. My wife and I went on a trip away with Matt and Rachel last week, which we had been planning for a while and really looking forward to. At dinner one night, my wife made a really mean comment after we started talking about the economy. She remarked, "Don't worry Rachel, you can join in the conversation once the smart people are done." She was the only one who laughed. I was completely embarrassed, and once we were alone, I told my wife she had been really rude and I was ashamed of her. I told her she needs to stop making nasty comments, and she agreed. However, the next night we all went out to a bar. Rachel was getting a lot of attention from guys there who were sending over drinks. My wife was looking visibly annoyed that she wasn't receiving the same attention, so I tried to lift her spirits by paying for all her drinks and making a fuss of her. One guy came over and said that Rachel looked just like the model Zendaya. My wife let out a massive laugh and said, "Did you mean to say Whoopi Goldberg?" I turned to my wife and straight up said, "You really are so jealous, aren't you?" She looked hurt but didn't have time to respond, as Rachel had left the table in tears. I followed Matt and told Rachel directly that I was so sorry for my wife's words and that I was ashamed of her behavior. When I reunited with my wife, she told me I was horrible for calling her jealous in front of everyone and embarrassing her. I told her straight up that she was jealous of Rachel, as Rachel is more attractive than her. I realize in hindsight this was a very heavy thing to say and can see why she would be hurt by it. However, I stand by the fact it was said in anger. Am I the jerk? Top/relevant comments. Commenter. Not the jerk. She dimmed her own light with her jealousy. She was rude and hurtful to Rachel. Jealousy does not give you a free pass to put someone down. Commenter 2. Not the jerk. The only person here who is not acting like a mature adult is your wife. You talked to her in private, and she didn't listen. Unfortunately, sometimes people have to be called out in public in order for them to get the point. Commenter 3. Not the jerk. Aside from the way you handled it at the end, she's the jerk. Stop bringing her around when you hang out with Matt and Rachel. Don't lie to her, just don't bring her anywhere they are going to be. If she doesn't like it, then oh well. She doesn't get to bully people and get rewarded. Commenter 4. Everyone sucks here. This is a case of play silly games, earn stupid prizes. Your wife's insecurities about something none of us get to choose, how our genetic makeup causes us to look, made her lash out at an innocent woman. Despite already having a husband, she is clearly jealous of the attention your friend's fiancé gets, so made disparaging remarks in order to make herself feel better for her perceived lack of attractiveness. Is she even aware how tiring unwanted attention from men is? How dangerous it can be? Especially for a woman that already has a boyfriend. Does she read the papers filled with women who were murdered by men infatuated by their looks, ones who decided that if they couldn't have them, no one will, and realize being highly attractive to men is often a blight on a woman? Of course not. All she sees is being pretty gets you attention, and wants to be entitled to the same. You stood by and let her repeatedly bully this woman in public because of her ridiculous jealousy, instead of shutting her down immediately. I'm surprised this couple have even given you a second chance. Your wife needs to get in therapy and sort her crap out. No one should suffer for her issues. Commenter 5. You stood by and let her repeatedly bully this woman in public because of her ridiculous jealousy, instead of shutting her down immediately. I'm surprised how few people seem to have picked up on this when declaring Op is not the jerk. Sure, his wife is the bigger jerk for saying all this stuff, but by choosing only to disagree with her in private and not saying anything when she was making the comments directly to Rachel, he's definitely a jerk too. Everyone sucks here, aside from the other couple, of course, is the only correct judgment. Op adds an edit to his post. I forgot to mention that since the trip, Matt has messaged me to let me know my wife is no longer welcome at their wedding, and that as a couple, he and Rachel have decided they aren't interested in our friendship anymore if my wife is around. Rachel feels as if my wife has bullied her, and has even suggested that some of the comments were racially motivated. I am so humiliated. Op adds a second edit to his post. Sorry, another edit. Just wanted to clarify my wife is stunning. I wouldn't have married her if I didn't think she was beautiful. She is just not as conventionally attractive. To me, she is the most beautiful woman on the planet, but objectively, Rachel is better looking. I'm very open to being the jerk in this situation, but I definitely wouldn't want people to think I'm not attracted to my wife. Update 1 day later. Thanks for the feedback, guys. Just to add, although I didn't call out my wife in public, I regularly called her out in private after she would make comments. The reason we continued to hang out as a group is because my wife reassured me she and Rachel got on well, and the comments were in good spirit. Matt would also continue to invite us out, so I didn't think it was too much of a problem. Also, in regards to the free drinks, Rachel accepted them for the table. We all shared the drinks and were joking around. The drinks were sent from the same two creepy guys, and it wasn't like the whole bar was buying Rachel drinks. Matt isn't insecure and would rather accept the free alcohol, haha. Also, my wife earns more than me, so we split costs 50-50 most of the time. I paid for her drinks this time to make her feel better. Before I update, I also want to make it clear that I don't have feelings for Rachel. I think she is a conventionally attractive girl, and she is a model. I'm not even really friends with Rachel. As some of you pointed out, she's younger, so we don't have much in common. I also want to make it clear that my wife is conventionally attractive also, just less so than Rachel. Rachel is a model. My wife is not. This doesn't mean I don't think my wife is more attractive than Rachel to me. I just mean objectively Rachel is better looking. I agree with the comments that both my wife and I were the jerks in this situation. My wife's behavior is unacceptable, and mine was cruel and has probably done lasting damage to my wife's self-esteem. I don't think I'm the jerk for failing to call out my wife sooner. In my opinion, you should never publicly criticize your partner, so for me, telling her privately that the jokes were inappropriate is enough. I also want to point out my wife and I have already had couples counseling, and my wife individual therapy. When I initially made the comment that Rachel is more attractive than her, my wife was furious, and rightly so. She said that it was a cruel thing to say and that she wasn't jealous of Rachel, and insisted that the jokes were not offensive and everyone was just tiptoeing around the pretty girl. When we returned home from the trip and I received Matt's message, I let my wife know. At first, she was hurt, but she eventually came around and said her behavior was inappropriate. She's admitted that she is jealous of Rachel due to her looks and was embarrassed by her behavior. I also asked her if she felt as if I found Rachel more attractive than her, but she said she didn't think that. It was just difficult seeing a younger, prettier girl get treated way better than her, and she felt like second best. I think my wife noticed Rachel getting special treatment from other people and was jealous she didn't receive the same. My wife has sent an apology to Rachel, but I don't think the friendship is salvageable. I will still attend the wedding, but my wife won't be coming along, even if she is re-invited. I think it's worth my wife having some more therapy, and I'll have to rethink things. This has definitely made me see things in a different light, and I'm really disappointed. Thanks again, everyone, for the feedback. /relevant comments. Commenter. All around yikes. I would not want to be with someone like that. Hell, I wouldn't blame friends for cutting me off, because it would make them question my character and judgment if I stay with someone like that. It was horrible before the racism reveal, and it became so much worse after. I don't think Op will keep his best friend any longer if he stays with his wife. Commenter 2. Not gonna lie, my opinion of my partner would effing tank into the ground if they actually sat there acting so heinously over being jealous of someone else's appearance, like a pathetic high schooler. Feel bad because you don't get the same attention, feel self-conscious over your looks or weight or whatever, but you do not under any circumstances get to crap on someone to their face who was nothing but nice to you because you're jealous a couple of creeps sent them a few drinks. That is a hard therapy or I divorce you, and I actively think less of you and need space until you prove you have changed line. Commenter 3. She remarked, don't worry, Rachel, you can join in the conversation once the smart people are done. Yeah, you say something like that, and you are metaphorically lighting your relationships with that person on fire. Story 3.
My mother-in-law refuses to use or acknowledge my baby's name. Posted by you/the amazing Loki. I'm seriously at a loss for what to do here. My 33F husband, 32M, and I welcomed our baby girl this last summer. She is our first baby and was conceived via IVF after a long battle with infertility. As such, we spent literal years coming up with potential baby names, and this was our top choice. Her first name is quite unique, but not in a way that we think people would toss her resume because they don't like her name, if that makes sense. Importantly, the name has roots in the Nahuatl language, aka Aztec, and while I am Hispanic, I am not Mexican, but my husband is. Her middle name is also in Nahuatl, though it is a slightly more common name. We also decided very early on that the baby would have my last name and not his. I kept my maiden name after we married, and husband felt that after all we went through, it was my right to have the baby carry my name. His father was also an abusive piece of crap who passed a few years back, and my husband has zero connections to that side of his family, so he had zero interest in passing on the family name. Notably, my mother-in-law remarried ages ago and doesn't have that last name either. Given our complicated journey, I was very superstitious about saying our baby's name out loud before she arrived. As such, we kept the name completely secret from everyone until she was born. Baby's arrival was dramatic and she ended up being born 6 weeks early after I developed preeclampsia, labored for 40 hours, and then had an emergency C-section. Needless to say, by the time she was here, we were so relieved to finally announce her arrival and her name. Husband messaged his mom to let her know me and baby were okay, and sent her a picture of the baby and said, "Meet baby, first name, middle name, my last name." His mother's response to hearing of the birth of her grandchild wasn't congrats or what a cute baby. But rather, oh, I would have named her, middle name, feminized version of husband's name, husband's last name. That's it. Since then, she will only refer to the baby by her middle name. We initially would correct her every time, but after that didn't do anything. My husband confronted her privately and told her to please use her first name. She apologized and said she would, but then hasn't. Won't. All her text messages are asking about baby middle name. Husband corrects her every time. We went to Christmas at her house, and all of the baby's gifts had a tag with her middle name on it. I'm at my wit's end about this, and it has now officially, truly pissed me off. What do I do? How do we get her to use the correct name? Husband has confronted her directly, and we both correct her every time she says the wrong name. Everything else she does is fine, and it seems extreme to withhold her grandchild from her based on this. But also, WTF? /relevant comments. Commenter. Holy crap, that would drive me absolutely insane too. At this point, she's doing it on purpose and being passive-aggressive as hell about not getting to name your baby herself. Have you tried just completely ignoring her when she uses the wrong name? Like, don't respond to texts that say the middle name, pretend you don't hear her at family gatherings when she calls the baby by the middle name only. Make it real awkward real fast. Ops response. Maybe I need to start doing that. I did obnoxiously say, "Oh, are you sure these are for baby name? They don't have her name on them," when my husband's nephews distributed all the gifts that were under the Christmas tree. Commenter 2. Ignore her and start calling her by a different name. Oh look, your child's name, it's Donkey. Ops response. Donkey. I'm dead lol. Commenter 3. Consequences. Tell her that until she uses the baby's first name, she won't have visits or contact. Boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. Ops response. Ugh, I hate that it has to get to this point. I just keep feeling like it's so extreme to cut contact over this. But at the same time, she is being so rude for no reason. Commenter 4. What's the big deal about the name for your mother-in-law? Ops response. I have no idea. What's crazy to me is my mother-in-law is Mexican and I am not. I thought she'd be honored, happy that we chose to honor her, my husband's heritage with the name. Husband even explained the significance of it to her. Mind you, my husband is very Mexican looking and she gave him the most basic Caucasian name. Think Christopher James or something. Like. Does she hate that it honors her heritage? I don't get it. Op adds an edit to her post. Wow, did not think this would blow up, but thanks to everyone who responded and or made helpful jokes. We are seeing my mother-in-law at a birthday gathering this weekend, which is why I made this post, so I'll discuss with husband and see what approach we are both comfortable with. I did want to quickly address a few things. 1. I will not be posting my daughter's name since I don't want to get doxxed. Not even if you PM me and promise you won't tell lol. 2. Mother-in-law does not have a middle name I can call her by, boo. 3. The act like she has dementia advice is funny in a vacuum, but as I shared in some comments, my husband's late father did die after dealing with dementia, so it's a bit of a sensitive topic for my husband, and I wouldn't want to upset him. His father was a piece of crap, but was still his father, and I know it was still hard to see him decline like that. I promise to report back after the family gathering this weekend. Prob will make an update post. Wish me luck. Update 4 days later. Hi all, I'm again overwhelmed by how many people commented on my first post. Overall, most people were super validating and gave me some good advice and suggestions, so thank you to everyone that commented. I reiterate that I will not be sharing my daughter's name for obvious reasons, so you all will just have to take my word for it that it's not a tragedy. I can tell you it's literally just 2 syllables, and no matter what accent or country of origin, you'd be able to say it with ease. On to the update. As I mentioned on my last post, we had a family get-together this weekend. After receiving some good tips, I spoke with my husband before the get-together to discuss how we wanted to address the name issue. He was similarly frustrated with mother-in-law writing baby's middle name on her Christmas gifts, so he agreed we needed to do something. We agreed that if and when mother-in-law said the wrong name, he would ask to talk to her privately and be a lot more straightforward and directly ask why she kept refusing to use the name, and tell her that it was hurtful and frustrating that she continued to ignore our request to use her name. The plan was to then tell her that it was important to us that baby has a good relationship with her, but it was equally important to us to know that our requests are being respected as her parents. If she couldn't be respectful of one, she can't expect to maintain the other. Well, the plan was great, but what ended up happening completely threw that out. As some of y'all predicted, mother-in-law ended up escalating her boundary pushing to a completely unacceptable degree. To be honest, I'm still completely shocked, as is my husband. For some background, there is a member of my husband's family that he grew up in very close proximity to, but who was never kind or even just amicable to my husband. My husband tried for years to maintain a relationship with this individual, but they were always toxic and cruel and eventually fell into hard drugs and alcohol and would always explode on my husband randomly, either by yelling at him, being violent towards him, or just the good old blowing up his phone harassing him out of the blue. Once husband moved out of his house, the blow-ups were mostly limited to phone outbursts here and there, as he was mostly low contact with this individual. By the time we met, he saw this person maybe 3 to 5 times a year max, so it was tolerable to him. Things came to a head a couple of years ago, when my husband found out during a routine traffic stop that there were several warrants out for his arrest for several minor drug-related charges. It turns out, this family member had basically stolen his identity and had given out my husband's info during some arrest a few years back and didn't show up for the hearing date. For some reason I still can't explain, all the information pertaining to that arrest was sent to that person's address and not our address, which would have shown up on my husband's personal info through the state. Needless to say, it was an extremely stressful time, but thankfully I am a lawyer. After providing a few affidavits about my husband's whereabouts and speaking with the prosecutor, who then reviewed the arrest photos and confirmed it's not my husband. The charges were quickly dropped. After that, I encouraged my husband to work with a therapist to work through the stress and trauma. I think he hadn't cut this person out completely because he hoped someday they could work things out, but this was just plain unforgivable. He then decided he was going no contact with this person. With his therapist's help and encouragement, he drafted a very long message to my mother-in-law explaining that he never wanted to see this person again and asking her to please accommodate this boundary moving forward. Since that discussion, my mother-in-law had been perfectly respectful of that boundary. Until this weekend. We showed up to her house Saturday and she greeted us normally and asked, "Can I hold the baby?" Of course, we said that was okay and let her hold the baby while we walked in and got settled. To our surprise, she immediately walked off to an adjoining room and we overheard her say hi to uncle, name. My husband immediately sprang into action and all but ran into the room to intercept. Apparently, my mother-in-law was trying to get the baby to hold his finger or something. My husband grabbed the baby and brought her to me, and I promptly left the house and got her buckled into the car seat while he got our stuff together and dealt with my mother-in-law. He said he was too shocked to say much more than "not effing okay," and we left right away. My husband was extremely quiet the whole drive home, so I let him be until the following day to give us both time to cool off and process. Once we got up Sunday, we had a heart-to-heart about where things stand. For now, we are putting mother-in-law on timeout. I voiced to my husband that whereas before I thought she was being rude and annoying, I now don't feel she is a safe person to be around because of how grossly she violated our boundaries. I also don't trust her judgment if she thinks that our daughter needs to ever be around that type of individual. Husband feels the same way and is frustrated, as he had hoped that this person would never get the privilege of knowing our beautiful daughter since they haven't earned it. He is also furious that mother-in-law would essentially use our daughter to try to heal a family rift that predates her and should never place her in the middle. So, that's kind of where we are now. Mother-in-law completely trampled our boundaries, and we are not going to be engaging with her for a while. I've encouraged my husband to start up therapy again to decide how he wants to move forward with her and go from there. At the end of the day, we do want her to have a relationship with our daughter, but this was a bridge too far for us, and we need to reevaluate whether the benefits of a relationship will outweigh the risks. My heart is breaking for my husband since I know he wants mother-in-law in his life, but he agrees our daughter's safety is first, and everything else is secondary. Thank you again to everyone that commented and sent helpful suggestions. I think for now we'll just keep mother-in-law away from baby until we can figure out next steps. As heartbroken as I am for my husband, I am equally proud of him for continuing to place our daughter first and keeping her away from the family drama. Here's to hoping we can figure out a safe place to land. /relevant comments. Commenter. Surely there should be some legal proceedings for this uncle for using your husband's identity? Ops response. We filed a police report, but they never really followed up with us. I wanted to pursue it, but husband decided the less he had to deal with that person, the better. So he never followed up with the police department. Commenter 2. Why in the world would you want your daughter to have a relationship with her? I never had any relationship with my paternal grandmother, and from what my parents told me, I'm glad she wasn't part of my life. She also did the name thing. She wanted my sister to be named Susan and wouldn't call her by her real name. Ops response. I wish things were that black and white. At the end of the day, she's my husband's mother, and they were quite close growing up. She has a lot of faults, but ultimately she sacrificed quite a lot for my husband growing up. Until these recent shenanigans, I hadn't personally had any issues with her either. She had always been respectful of me and didn't cause any drama until our daughter came about. With that said, we are both taking this very seriously, and will not resume contact and access to our daughter until some very specific things are addressed to our satisfaction. At the very least, we are both agreed that she will never be allowed unsupervised access to our daughter. Commenter 3. Time out? My dad played some similar BS with me, and I never spoke to him again. I never saw him after he went into a care facility. He died without us ever closing that loop. I skipped his funeral to be with my sick wife. I took my mom to his gravesite and we talked about how I walked away and why he treated me the way he did. That was some decent closure for me. You need a timeout like that because this BS will never get better and never stop. Ops response. I don't entirely disagree with you, but it's not 100% my call to make. Husband made this call with his late father and didn't see him for many years, up until he buried him. I think there's a part of him that regrets not having one last discussion with his father, so I don't know. I don't want to push him into having the same issue with his mother too. I'm just so heartbroken for him, because all he keeps saying is how frustrated he is by his family's issues. This is why I encouraged him to resume therapy. I don't want to push him to a decision that he will one day regret. I'd rather he come to a decision he can live with through therapy and counseling. As long as our daughter is safe, I want to support him as best I can with dealing with his family. For now, getting lots of space is the priority.
Story 4.
I found out my manager has an after-work podcast where he talks about his employees. Posted by you/ThrowRainSidious2. No, you're not reading the title wrong. I, 19F, thought my friend Don was pulling my leg when he told me, but he recently found out and told me about it because I was mentioned in said podcast. For background, this is an office job, and I am interning as a phone rep mostly while also in college. John showed me the podcast that someone showed him after finding it, and that's how I found out. Long story short, it is one of our managers, Josh, 29M, and his friend on the podcast, and his friend doesn't work at the company. He doesn't solely talk about his employees on the podcast, he also does sports/politics, but the segment where he did was about work stories related to his job. I'll refrain from the actual title for obvious reasons. One of the clips John showed me was about a girl who went on maternity leave and the girl who replaced her temporarily, and he made jokes comparing them, using their first names, and even called her replacement retarded. However, the clip about me involved my Instagram. Long story short, I haven't used Instagram in years, and my last post was literally 4 years ago, when I was in high school and 15. Maybe I should have had it private, and I've since deleted it this week. On the podcast, he talked about how some of the managers follow each other and some of the employees, but that there were a few he didn't follow that led him to search them to learn more about his team, and that's how he came across mine. He said I had a hidden talent of dance from high school that I didn't tell him about, and he joked it was because I didn't want to be hit on. He also said my boyfriend must be happy with my flexibility even though I'm single, and his friend said that that was the reason I posted and that my face wasn't doing it. Josh also joked about if I was still flexible, and his friend said to drop something to have me bend down. Josh is a jokester at work, but I was floored by his video. It's on YouTube. And while it doesn't show his face, his name is in the description, and my friend wants to address it with HR after telling the mother who was on maternity leave. However, he's not sure if there's anything else we should do beforehand besides having numbers, when we go in, that he thinks will be important, and he wants us to go in together. So here is my question. Are we handling this correctly, and is there anything else we should do beforehand to get our ducks in a row, perhaps even legally such as consulting a lawyer? Top/relevant comments. Commenter. HR exists to protect the company, not you. Your mileage may vary, but remember that at all times. HR is not your friend. Document everything yourself. The podcast likely breaks company policy in multiple ways, and some aspects could be considered sexual harassment. You absolutely should file a formal complaint together. There is nothing here, yet, to get a lawyer involved with. If the harassment continues or there is any kind of retaliation, even a position change, that would be where you can look at legal avenues. Ops response. We're trying to have copies of the videos and the description with his name and everything that shows it's from him when we go in, but thank you for pointing out the part about HR. First ever time going to HR about something, so honestly didn't know much of what to expect. Update 11 months later. As I'm writing this, I'm no longer at the company. My coworker and I went to HR according to the advice we received, and we used a YouTube downloader to download the videos specifically mentioning employees in case they'd be deleted upon him learning of a potential investigation. I also made sure to tell them that the dance videos he commented about me were from when I was much younger, and we also mentioned his derogatory comments about the coworker on maternity leave. We gave them links along with a thumb drive containing copies of the videos we downloaded, and we felt like it went fine at the time. We only received one follow-up meeting afterwards to let us know that they spoke to the manager about it, and that meeting was given separately to my coworker and me. The videos were also deleted around that time, and the manager was never fired, at least when I was there for a few more months. The follow-up meeting was the last update we got before months of radio silence, but my ex-coworker, and I have a guess as to why. All of the managers, including the 2 HR workers at our office, are tight, and they all often go out for sushi after close in the same plaza as our office too. They also follow each other on social media, although the manager's podcast was never linked to his personal social from what we saw before going to HR, so we weren't exactly expecting much when they're practically friends and post Instagram photos together, including the HR managers with them too. Months went by with no updates following the follow-up, and said podcast manager began to treat me somewhat differently, like being short with me or giving me side eyes too. Even the mother on maternity leave made a complaint after we told her about his comment. But again, nothing came from it to our knowledge. I eventually put in my 2 weeks, and that was pretty much it. His podcast channel is still up and posts new episodes, but nothing pertaining to work or coworker stories from when I last checked. My coworker friend said he wouldn't be surprised if the other managers already knew about the podcast, given how tight they were. I began looking for other work around the time we initially visited HR because he really came off as a creep. There was another comment from the video about me that I forgot to add, but he said that he should offer a prize for whoever had the best split at the annual Christmas party as a way to see if I still had them. They play fun games at the Christmas party, and the whole thing just felt gross to me. I had already left the company by the time of the party, but it's creepy just knowing that a manager I thought was completely normal could be such a creep. Second update 8 months later. One of my biggest regrets from my old job was not getting legal advice before talking to HR. Some suggested going to HR instead, and my parents did too. I took their advice because I was 19 at the time, but now I regret not following my own instinct. Perhaps it wouldn't have gone to court, but a lawyer could have offered better advice on how to approach HR and potentially receive some sort of settlement, as some stated. The reason I'm thinking about it again is because of a new video Josh posted on his podcast that my ex-coworker told me about. Josh and his buddy made a video about a new job he landed before leaving the office I used to work at. And in the episode, he reflected on some things from his previous job too. He opened up about why the Work Stories segment stopped and how someone complained to HR about it. He said that Work Stories would continue at his new place, but that they'd have fake names so no one could accuse him of anything. Despite saying he wouldn't go into full detail about the HR incident, he said that someone got offended about how he said he looked up the social media of his employees to learn more about them in a since-deleted episode. He also said some people popped up randomly, like how Instagram suggests people you should follow. He also said that people shouldn't be offended when people see their posts because they shared it to the world. So if they didn't want anyone to see it, they never should have posted in the first place. And while he didn't mention me by name, he referred to me as the girl who did dance and complained to HR about him. He also pointed out how I later left the company and was always quiet, which was why he looked me up. He said that his comments about me were a joke and that I couldn't take it as such. He also said he went along with his idea of the Christmas party, where each manager suggests a game with a prize, to see who had the best split, and I didn't attend because I had already left the company. The fact that he was allowed to do the game that he mentioned in the video I downloaded and gave to HR, where he wanted to see if I could do the splits, shows the lack of seriousness regarding my complaint, unless they somehow forgot or didn't watch the full video. Josh's entire video was making excuses for what happened, and the only lesson he learned was to make future names anonymous for Work Stories. He also said my dance posts from high school were thirst traps, and that I used it against him with HR. In light of his recent video vaguely mentioning me, I reached out to a counselor at my job to ask if it would be appropriate to reach out to his new job, that he actually mentioned in the podcast, about what happened at his previous job, with the downloaded proof of him sexualizing me and calling that other employee retarded from his now deleted podcast, and she said it would be appropriate. She also pointed out how he openly sexualized me for the splits and proceeded to have a competition about them at the Christmas party, so there's enough there to hopefully prevent it from happening somewhere else after I try. My friend who alerted me to the video is also open to backing my claim. I also want to add something about how tight the managers were at my old job. 2 of those managers are now engaged, as confirmed via social media. Most of the managers often went out to eat after shifts at a sushi place in our plaza, but you'd see photos of them together at other things on their social media, with the lead HR manager too. I'm glad to no longer work there because it felt impossible to receive support when they're practically close friends. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. Wildly appalling. So she was 15, at the oldest. In the splits video he not only sexualized, but then recreated en masse at work for his and his cronies' sick joke. I hope to several deities that she connected with his new work, and they care more than his old work besties. Why are people making podcasts about people in their own life behind their back? This one was just posted about roommates mocking their shy and mentally ill roommate. Too many people believe they're interesting enough for lots of other people to shut up and listen to them on loud. I love podcasts, but I must say for the general betterment of society, stop making podcasts. Commenter 2. Managerial incompetence like this is how people like Josh never learn their lesson. There have been countless stories of people like this girl who have been sexualized for athletic activity, whether it's dance or gymnastics or anything that draws creeps like Josh and his podcast friend. But I'm not surprised when the managers all go out to eat on a regular basis and post photos at various activities, including with the HR managers, which shows how little professionalism this place has. They probably chalked up his comments to nothing more than locker room talk. Third update 3 months later. This is the last time I'm gonna return to this. I had moved on from Josh for over a year since I left my previous job, only to be reminded of him by John when he made his latest video about me from my last update. I've since asked John to no longer give me updates about Josh because he's infuriating, and I've blocked Josh on everything. John and I reached out to Josh's new job with the same evidence we presented at my previous job. We told them about what he called a maternity mother, the creepy stuff he said about me, along with the clips we downloaded too. We also mentioned Josh's latest video where he complained about me going to HR and said work stories would continue at his new job. However, despite everything we told them, Josh still works there. Josh followed through on his promise to resume the work stories segment at his new job, and he's made recent videos about starting there. Perhaps they don't care because the videos don't show his face, but he explicitly named the company, although he now uses fake names when referring to employees. My therapist also agrees with moving on and said we did more than we had to. I hate how the world seems to cater to people like Josh who are blatant in their behavior and face no consequences, like a certain someone running our country currently. His old job even embraced the splits joke about me by allowing him to do a splits competition at the Christmas party, the idea he had to see if I still had them. I didn't mention this in my previous posts, but Josh even joked that he might have touched himself to gymnasts in the past during the now-deleted episode where he sexualized me, and I was 15 in the clips he referred to of me from my Instagram. I've told that to both Josh's previous and current jobs, along with a downloaded video with a timestamp to it that we provided, but nothing came from it. I'm moving on because just thinking about it aggravates me. Also, for those who keep messaging me to tell me that I can still try to sue Josh. His original video about me was over 3 years ago, and I'm ready to move on. /relevant comments. Commenter. Sigh. Another case of the boys' club closing ranks. Commenter 2. HR really showed its true purpose here, protect the company, not the employees. This dude openly sexualized a minor, doubled down years later, and the only lesson learned was to use an alias. Absolutely disgusting. But sadly not surprising. I'm glad Op is moving on, because carrying this kind of rage forever isn't fair to her, even if he deserved real consequences. Commenter 3. Op should just point Reddit towards the podcast at this point. I know one surefire way to get Josh to stop.
Story 5.
I missed an important funeral, and now I think my 5-year relationship with my partner might be over. Posted by you/so_throwaway1. Before everything happened between us, we were solid. I thought this guy was my forever. He, 28M, and I, 26F, lived together for the past 3 years, and I always loved him and the way we supported and helped each other. He used to say we were family, and we would always look after each other. This year was my final year in uni to get my Master of Architecture and my Part 2 exemption to become an architect. In March this year, the final printed copy of my research project was due, basically a culmination of the past 7 years of my education. Unfortunately, during this time, my partner's grandmother passed away. This woman basically raised him when both his parents couldn't deal. They were incredibly close. In her final years, she got dementia, but she always remembered him and their little inside jokes. He loved her so much, probably more than anyone else in the whole world. Over those few weeks after she passed away, I tried to spend a lot of time with him. I took him to the archdiocese, and we lit candles and walked through the gardens and talked about his grandmother. His friends came up for a visit that weekend, and I spent the weekend with them to keep him happy, even though I should have been working on finishing my research project. I took care of him all that week, letting him rest and try to mourn. Unfortunately, his boss is a huge prick, and it was a struggle for him to get any time off to properly rest and take care of himself. His grandmother's funeral was scheduled to be 4 days before my research project hand-in date. The problem with this is that I still needed to get everything printed and do final editing, and the funeral was happening on the other side of the country. This was a 200-page research project. I worked my ass off to get everything together beforehand, so that I could go with him, but in the end, I didn't have the time, and the reality was that I was editing and adding to the project up until 2 days before my hand-in. I did Skype with him in the mornings and evenings so we could talk about how he was doing. After the funeral, he returned home, but he was incredibly sad. After my hand-in, I tried to talk with him about it. He showed me some pictures, and I read the eulogy that his sister read at the funeral. I cried a bit after reading the eulogy, and that's when my boyfriend got angry. He said that I didn't have a right to cry or be upset because it was his grandmother and because I had chosen to forego the funeral. Things have just gone downhill since then. It's been 2 months. On top of my research project, I also had my regular work to finish over the past 2 months. It's just been a very busy time in my life. My boyfriend went through a similar experience the year before, where I helped and supported him through his work, and he tried to help me and support me through mine, but the entire time he was cold and distant, and at one point he even admitted to me that he didn't want to help me, and he couldn't be bothered. So this all came to a head recently, when I confronted him about how he's been distant and the way he has been treating me, ignoring me all day, being rude, distant, and sometimes downright nasty to me. He basically said he can't forgive me for missing his grandmother's funeral, and he doesn't think he ever will. At this point I will admit that I lost it. I was put in a situation where I had to choose between my relationship and my education, and it's only in hindsight that I see it. I was so overwhelmed and upset that I hit my head against the wall hard and screamed, but only because I've never been in so much emotional pain in my life. I didn't know how to handle it, so I handled it poorly. Since then things have not gotten better. We've tried to talk it over calmly, but a few days ago he lost it and went on this rant about how terrible his life is and how hurt he is. There is a lot more going on with his family than I knew, including that his father used to beat him badly and his grandmother would protect him. I never knew this about his father, though I knew they had an incredibly strained relationship. I've suggested therapy, but he has said he's not up for it. We talked about a solution, and he thinks I need to go back to my home country by myself for a few weeks and be with my family, and to leave him alone for that time so that he can think and mourn alone. He also said that he is thinking about moving out of our flat at the end of the summer, to go live with some friends, but he said that he wants us to stay together. I think at this point that the relationship might be over. I don't know how to show him that I'm sorry I missed the funeral, but there was no other option for me. I love this guy so much, but if this is how our relationship is going to be, I don't think I can do it. I need perspective on this issue. Maybe some advice on how to apologize properly? And if not, maybe some advice on how to end a long-term relationship? /relevant comments. Commenter. I would suggest that if he is going through this emotional turmoil over his grandmother, he should leave the house. By all means, if he needs space, he should take it, but you should not have to leave your home or the country for him to grieve. Commenter 2. If he can't forgive you, there can be no relationship. And if his conditions for grieving involve you moving out, then, yes, it's over. If he doesn't forgive you, then in every disagreement that comes up, he's going to pull out this incident to bludgeon you. It's also clear that he has never fully opened up to you. The fact that you only just found out how bad his childhood was is a bad sign. It's the sort of thing that you talk about with people you are close to, because it helps to explain how you deal with the world. It's a level of vulnerability that leads to a deeper level of trust. And always choose education over relationships. Significant others come and go. The only permanent relationship in your life is with yourself. Commenter 3. Your significant other needs to recognize that you can't move a graduate thesis deadline. This was the culmination of higher education that you've been working toward for 7 years. That is not the kind of thing you blow off, even for a funeral. It sounds like you were very supportive the entire time, and took time out of a very stressful period in your life to comfort him. He needs to recognize this, and hopefully he will, once the grief lessens. I don't think you need to apologize. I think some space, you going to visit family, isn't a bad thing. But if he still wants to move in with friends after you return, then he's basically saying he can't forgive you. Personally, I would tell him he needs to go to therapy to process his grief in a healthy way. The way he's lashing out at you isn't fair, and if he isn't willing to work through it, then it's over. Adds an edit to her post. A lot of people have been mentioning this. I did ask for an extension from my academic advisor, and he told me that the school does not grant extensions under any circumstances. The way my university handles mitigating circumstances for graduate projects is that they expect you to turn in whatever work you have completed by the deadline, and then they allow you to resubmit the completed project at the next grading cycle. However, this would mean that I would not be allowed to graduate this year, and would have to wait until the next graduation cycle. Also, I should mention that we usually return to my home country for a few weeks in the summer to visit my family. A trip wasn't planned or set for this summer, but we had discussed a possibility of it. That's why it's not a completely unreasonable request that I go home for a while. Update 2 weeks later. I just wanted to first say thank you very much for all of your advice. It was really helpful, it made me feel like less of a terrible person, and made me realize that my boyfriend is still mourning the loss of his grandmother. My significant other and I had a long discussion the night I posted for advice on Reddit, and we agreed that we wanted to be together, but that something needed to change in our relationship. We set some basic ground rules, and we both agreed to start seeing separate therapists, him for his grief and troubles with his dad, and me for my lack of confidence and stress management. He again asked for space, so he moved out of our bedroom and into the spare bedroom in our flat. I also booked a flight home for a few weeks to visit my own family, and I am set to leave in 4 days. We were making some good progress this week, enjoying time with each other, going to the park, just generally trying to reconnect. After sleeping in the spare bed for 5 days, he decided to move back into our room, and I was very happy about that. Up until 2 days ago, I genuinely thought that we were going to make it through this. Things came to a head last night. I received my grades back from the school. I am very proud to say that I got an A on my research project, and one of my urban design proposals has also been nominated by my school for a gold award from the REBA. I am incredibly proud. This year was definitely the most difficult in my entire life, and I did not expect to do as well as I actually did. I literally just wept when I got my results. I sent my significant other a long message, letting him know how I did and about the nomination, but more importantly thanking him for being there to support me through my degree. I told him I loved him and that I was glad we were working together on our relationship. He came home that night fuming. He was so angry. He just yelled at me for basically an hour about my lack of confidence in my own work, and about how I didn't need to miss his grandmother's funeral. He told me he hated me, and after that I sort of just numbed out. I don't really remember much of what he said after that, I just stopped talking and listening. My final end-of-year show is happening this week. It's a huge celebration of the students' work, and I filled an entire wall to exhibit my architectural work and my research results. During the end-of-year show, a lot of people find jobs, so it's important for us to be there to network and talk about our projects with people in the industry. I did this for my boyfriend last year when he exhibited his own work. I spent 6 hours at that event talking to different people about how amazing his work was. This morning, he told me not to expect him to come tonight because he needs to go to the gym. I'm flying home in 4 days, and I can tell that he just wants me to leave and never come back, which is what I am doing. I have stuck with all my promises that I made to him, I've supported him as best I could, and I've begun seeing a therapist. He hasn't even called his general practitioner to get a referral to a therapist yet. He doesn't want to fix our relationship, he just wants to keep me around to pay half of our rent and to use as a punching bag. So we're over. I just paid my final half of the rent, and I'm moving back to my home country. I was originally only planning on returning for a few weeks, but with this Brexit vote looking so grim, I don't really see the point in being in the UK anymore. Why return and find a job here when I will most likely be asked to leave in a year? I like the UK, and I love my boyfriend, but it seems neither wants me, so I'm going home to take care of myself. /relevant comments. Opt to a deleted commenter. Thank you for your kind words. And don't worry, nothing on earth could keep me from my final showing at university. I'm very proud of my work, and so are my friends and family. I'm going tonight, and I'll be celebrating it and drinking in good company. My boyfriend did not study architecture, but we attended the same university, where he studied digital design. Truthfully, he put on an excellent exhibition. I think he understands how much work I put in, but overall resents the fact that I could not spend my attention on him when he needed me most. You're right, I might be jumping the gun on the Brexit, and everything might turn out all right, but I'm worried about the economic implications of the fallout. I'm not interested to struggle through a poor economy and constricted construction industry. I've actually just been offered a job at a firm working on a city planning project in my home country, from a friend of my father's. It's nepotism, but I am excited for the project and a new start, so I think this is a good time to leave for me. Commenter. Just out of curiosity, does he already know that you won't come back? If so, what was his reaction? If not, do you plan on telling him somehow? Also, I think you made the right choice. I can certainly imagine that he will come around at one point and realize how idiotic his behavior was, but I can totally see why you wouldn't want to wait for this, since this day could also never come. Ops response. I told him this morning. I think he was kind of numb after everything he said last night, so he just agreed. He's been texting me all day from work, saying that he's sorry and that he will come to my show, but I replied that he's no longer invited. I'm staying at a friend's place for the next 4 days. I'm just in the middle of packing all of my clothes now. I don't care about the furniture in the flat, and I'm leaving my bike and instruments with my friend, so she can use the bike and take care of my instruments. Commenter 2. Do you think he'll show up anyway? Is it open to the public? I'd hate for you guys to end up having a knockdown, drag-out fight while you are trying to network professionally. Then again, given his attitude and behavior, the way you described it, he might just accept his invitation and not bother fighting for it. Ops response. I'm not really concerned about if he shows up. This event isn't open to the public, and the security is very tight. He isn't a violent guy. I expect if he does show up at my friend's house over the weekend, that he would just be crying. I think it will be better once I'm gone, then he can focus on himself, and I can focus on myself. Opt to another commenter. To be very clear, I live in Glasgow, Scotland, and the funeral was happening in a town called Felixstowe, in Sussex. I was not exaggerating when I said it was literally on the other side of the country.